Are there other moves for the Patriots to make? Now, of course, the large conversation is what's going to go down in the draft, and that's probably going to particularly tell us where this team takes aim at potential other free agents that could fit what's going on. My argument to anything with formulating this team is trusting Mike Vrabel, his vision for this team, and the fact that he's not one of those go out and just grab names kind of guy. He's very meticulous in who he grabs. He's a plug and play kind of coach. So you never know sometimes like if the name makes sense until you see his system pan out. So I guess I overall ask you the arching question of if there's other moves you really feel heavily that this team needs to make before the draft.
I mean, just looking at the roster, the only spot left that has a huge question mark on it is left tackle. At this point in the offseason, you're not going to find one. You're not going to find a day one starting left tackle out in free agency or by trade. So you kind of have to wait until the draft. Can you make supplemental moves? Yes. But with how their cap situation set up, they technically have, I think it's around $65 million, but taking into account, the signings they'll have to make after the draft and filling out the roster and the top 53 rule, they really only have like $35 million, which is something that you'll want to carry into the season because if you're, midway through the year and you're in contention to make a postseason push, you might want to make a big trade. You might want to swing for the fences for a guy like Brandon Ayuk. He might be available at the deadline, and you'll need $12 to $14 million available to be able to swing that trade. So I think they're pretty set with the roster right now in terms of free agency. Now it's really just focusing on where do they draft that left tackle? How do they fill in the rest of the roster spots around them? I think defensively, Mike Vrabel said it, where they found premier playmakers at each level of the defense. They feel confident in that unit. Now it's supplementing the offense, giving Drake May as much as possible to be successful. And I think we're looking at a team that's going to be a hell of a lot better than they were last year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, all signs point to this offensive line. But then, of course, there's just this whole weird dance and potential reality of what and who they can get at that number 4 spot come the draft time. Yeah. So like say devil's advocate really fast. Travis Hunter is available at 4, but honestly your biggest need right now more likely is going to be adding to that offensive line. Do you think that they go for the generational talent or you think they plug the gap on the O-line?
Yeah. Have you ever seen the movie Draft Day?
Of course. Kevin Costner. Okay. Say less.
Right. The Post-it note that says Vontae Mack no matter what. I have one that says Travis Hunter no matter what. You take Travis Hunter if he's available.
Figure out
he's the best player in the draft. And and you figure out the rest later. They're in a cool spot where if they draft Travis Hunter and with the way the rest of the roster looks like, they could really make a push.
Yeah.
And by really make a push, I mean trade back into the first round. Go get that offensive tackle. I'm a big fan of Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. I've talked about him on Foxborough Rush. I've written about him. I think if he's available in the early 20s and you've already drafted Travis Hunter, you go make that trade, you get Josh Simmons, and you're a playoff team. I truly believe that. With what Travis Hunter brings on both sides, he'll be an offensive player on this team because he'll really only need to play a certain amount of snaps on defense kind of as a slot corner with how they've set up the defense. So that's the perfect scenario for me is Travis Hunter, trade back in, get Josh Simmons, and you move, right? You're a playoff team. You're able to fight for the division. Buffalo still has it on lock, but you're able to be competitive with them. So that's the perfect situation. But if Travis Hunter's not there, you're still in a good spot where you could draft Will Campbell or Armon Menbu and still have your left tackle. You might the supplementary picks filling in the rest of your roster is a little bit more difficult there, but you really can't go wrong with what they've done this offseason. I've said it a few times. I'm a big fan of the way they approach the offseason and the execution as well.
Yeah, like I said, in Vrabel, I very much trust because of the way that he handles his rosters. You saw the difference that he made and the impact with the Titans, and considering the team, the roster, the shambles that he had to clean up at that point, I would say was a little bit more dramatic than what he stepped into here. So I'm a big fan of that. But the sticky note, thank you for painting that picture because I was a big fan of that moment and all the drama that just went around the one sticky note. Travis Hunter at all costs. But there's also good picks that could fall into the second round, considering, that tends to get overlooked and you get some surprises. It depends on their athleticism and how they can plug in if they have the right guys coaching them up to make a difference. But you mentioned Brandon Ayuk a minute ago. We do have to touch on this. Now, he's another guy that might have some attitude / character question marks around things. I'm going to chalk a lot of that up to kind of feeling undervalued and underappreciated with the role that he did play with the 49ers. But can he stay healthy? That's also a massive question mark when it comes to this guy. So there could be a potential landing spot of him being a good fit with the Patriots. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, for now, I forget who tweeted out. It was either a Schefter or a Rappaport, but it was essentially they have until Tuesday to make a trade because he's guaranteed half of his salary by Tuesday. So if he's not traded by then, the 49ers are already in the, they have to pay him, so they'll take him into the year. He's a good player. He's coming off an injury, but he's a good wide receiver. He gives Brock Purdy another target to throw to. So there is a deadline before the season starts to trade for Brandon Ayuk. Right now, from New England's perspective, do you want two veteran wide receivers coming off of torn ACLs to lead your wide receiver room? No. Right? You know what I mean? And in that situation, if you do trade for Brandon Ayuk, now you're giving up on Jalen Polk, and you're giving up on Javon Baker, and Kayshon Boutte's role is essentially non-existent. Pop Douglas is still there. Kendrick Bourne, you'll want a veteran wide receiver who can fill in for if one of those guys goes down or can play multiple roles. So you're really putting a lot of your eggs into the veteran injured wide receiver basket, and I never think that's good business. I've been saying it with George and Travis. If you want a good wide receiver, just draft one. And I know it's easier said than done. They haven't done it since they drafted Julian Edelman, who wasn't even a wide receiver when they drafted him. But just draft the wide receiver and pay him early. That's what good teams do. That's what smart teams do. I don't love the idea of paying older guys or trading for older guys. You already paid one. Don't go and trade for another one.
Yeah, as much as everyone thinks that the name would kind of hold some sort of value in totality to being able to be a part of this Patriots roster, I agree with the fact that you don't need two guys coming off of injury. But another thing is, and not going to add any flame to the fire, some people think that Stefon Diggs choosing to be in the Patriots locker room and kind of having some of the passion and let's just say moments we've seen on the sidelines. Yeah. I don't know if I could see him and Ayuk both trying to lead a locker room. I feel like their leadership styles would kind of clash a bit. And right now, Diggs has an opportunity to feel like that special like head wide receiver, whether it's wide receiver 1 or 2, depending on what takes place in the draft. He still has that veteran presence where he could be the leader in that locker room and that leader for a lot of the young guys on this team. But you bring Ayuk into the mix, and I think that's just going to change things dynamically a little too much. And another thing Vrabel built off of heavily was like relationship and connection is going to be crucial for this locker room. Right. And that's where I just don't really see things jazzing. And then comparing to injured veterans or now on a health journey, one would say Ayuk's had a lot more injuries on his resume than Stefon Diggs has had. So that's my other biggest concern. Like Diggs said it in his press conference. It's not like I'm a 31-year-old who's been injured over and over again. He's basically had a clean slate for 10 years. And then all of a sudden this, whereas like Ayuk, we're hearing about him being out of the lineup so much more consistently.